So you think the city will find ways of making income to pay for this shortfall?
Absolutely. And I'll give you another prime example of it. You live in a house for 20 years. Maybe you bought it for $1 million 20 years ago. You sell it to me. I pay $3 million for it. You were paying approximately $13,000 a year in property taxes. When I buy it for $3 million, the city's going to get $35,000 a year in property taxes because they're going to reassess my purchase to $3 million and they're going to wave goodbye to you and they're happy to see you go because you were only paying half that, if that. So they know where the revenue streams can come from and they'll jack up the transfer tax, more revenue, they'll jack up the property taxes as best they can, and that's what's going on.
Now, do you think the city leaders, I saw that the mayor wanted to bring the UC system, UC schools to downtown. Do you think the city leaders are not concerned about what's going on?
They're concerned, but they're grabbing at straws to solve it. If I was a businessman and I had a company and I rented, say, the Bank of America building on California Street, I paid a pretty good premium price per square foot for my rent. You bring in UC, you know, you're trying to put a thumb in the dike. The dam is bursting and we'll put a UC school down here. Well, they're not going to pay what the average businessman was paying or company was paying downtown for office space. They're going to pay a pittance of a percentage of what they were paying. So what's it going to solve?
And the students are not going to spend much because they're students, right? Compared to business people, if they were to go shopping in that area, right?
Well, that's exactly correct. And you brought up an interesting point. When those buildings were 70, 80% full, or 80 and 90% full in the heyday, those employees were there. They weren't home on a Zoom. Those employees would go downstairs for lunch and support the guy that had the cafe or the shoe shop in the neighborhood or whatever. Those people aren't there. Those mom and pop shops are going broke. There are more for lease signs on frontage properties where retail was had existed. They couldn't survive. There's nobody down there anymore. There's nobody spending money in their shops. And that's been the price we've paid for this remote, drives me crazy, remote working. They have to bring people back to work downtown. Mark Benioff, the founder and owner of Salesforce, built the highest tower in the whole city. A week ago, he says in the press, city's going in the wrong direction. Here's a guy that's been a big benefactor to the mayor and a lot of programs in the city. He knows, and he's against remote employees. Bring them back. There's no reason not to bring them back. People are getting too cushy about, oh, I'll work from home. Socially, it doesn't work. Economically, it doesn't work. And it's costing the city.
Pete, you mentioned that they got to bring the people back, but some people are saying that the crime and homelessness is another side of this, that's actually people don't want to go because what they see on the streets. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a convenient excuse. If you're going to a downtown high-rise to work, you're going to be insulated from the homeless. Once you're in your building, you're in your building. They're not in the lobbies downstairs where you go to lunch and all that. They're out on the street. So I don't buy that argument. I think socially we're paying a heavy price for people not working side by side in offices, and I just don't think it works. Crime's always been in cities. It's just that the homelessness has just gotten so out of hand, but it's basically out on the streets, not in the buildings, of course.
So you were saying that the city has kind of changed over the last 3 decades. It's gotten a lot worse. Some people say you guys, San Franciscans, you guys wanted this, you voted for it. Did you guys really vote for this? Because mostly it's...
I understand what you're saying. Unfortunately, there are coalitions that band together, and when these coalitions get together, they're following votes the way they want them to vote. They overwhelm the moderate to conservative person in San Francisco. The so-called east side of the city controls the vote. The west side used to be a factor, not so much anymore, and that's the bedroom communities of the Sunset, the Richmond, and those areas. The concentration of voters is really, the majority is on the east side. You also have the homeowner and the renter. The renters far outweigh the homeowners on the voting rolls. So when you have something that's going to benefit the homeowner, generally speaking, the renters are going to not go along with it, and it's almost a lost cause at that point. Until the coalitions wake up and see that what they're voting for is destroying the city, it's going to be the status quo, unfortunately. You know, just last week, another conviction in federal court for public corruption in San Francisco. We've had no less than 6 public figures be convicted in federal court for white-collar crime, corruption, under the present mayor's reign. There wasn't a district attorney. Now, Chesa Bodine was the district attorney who we removed because of his ultra-liberal leanings. But he was on duty when these people were committing their crimes. The state attorney general, he was nowhere to be found. The city attorney of San Francisco was nowhere to be found. It took the federal government to come in and expose this corruption. And you have to wonder, how come these other 3
more local authorities are not coming in?
Judicial local authorities, not a peep out of them about the corruption. And here we have 6 people have gone to jail, convicted in federal court of their crimes of corruption. This isn't tenable, and it speaks to the stranglehold. And I'm a lifelong Democrat, but it speaks to the stranglehold of the Democrats in San Francisco, and it's going to be that way. There's no way the Republicans are going to get anybody elected in San Francisco. But for the people not to criticize those 3 arms of government that had nothing to do with those convictions and took a blind eye to them, that makes you wonder.
Now, do you think this kind of corruption is deep in San Francisco right now, based on what you have seen?
I know from my experience that the corruption exists in the assessor's office in San Francisco. I represent many taxpayers before the Assessment Appeals Board. It's an independent board that hears the referee, that hears the assessor's opinion of a property's value and the taxpayer's opinion, and they render a decision. The board's not corrupt. What goes on in the assessor's office is criminal. Since 1992, San Francisco has not had an assessor who has a professional background in real estate.
Do you think this is across the board? Do you think one of the reasons San Francisco is in a place it is as a city is because of this? Like, people have gotten into jobs that they should not be getting, just they're getting it because of political connections?
Well, that is a factor, and it's certainly a factor in the assessor's office. And, you know, the assessor of every county in this state has the constitutional duty to fairly assess. In San Francisco, it's, hey, the Board of Supervisors needs the money. The mayor needs the money. Let's keep the values up artificially. And, you know, here we are having to go down and fight for every penny that's for a fair assessment, an equitable assessment. The city had an assessor who was on the Board of Supervisors prior to being the assessor. She purchased a house with her husband in one of the bedroom communities out in the Sunset District in 2006.
So the Board of Supervisors, somebody on the Board of Supervisors became the assessor.
She eventually became the assessor.
Okay.
But before she became assessor, she bought her house in 2006. In the typical way you go about filing for an appeal of your property taxes, you go to City Hall or you go online, you fill out an application, and you file it with the Assessment Appeals Board. And you're saying, hey, I don't think my taxes are being assessed fairly, and I'd like to have a hearing. This person never filed anything of an appeal.
And you were on the appeal board, right?
I was on the appeals board in 2006, but I left shortly thereafter. I wasn't there when this happened.
Okay.
And it was all done under the table. An assessor arbitrarily reduced that Board of Supervisors' house in property taxes for 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. Wow. 4 straight years, he reduced that person's property taxes, no record of an appeal. Then, before Mayor Lee passed away, Phil Teen got elected to the state senate, and the mayor appointed this person from the Board of Supervisors as the new assessor. She reduced her own property taxes the next year without an appeal. She did it arbitrarily.
Wow.
You talk about the chicken, the wolf or fox in charge of the chicken coop. This is the stuff that goes on, and it's got to be called out.
And do you think it's across the board in the city? Because it's a rich city, it has a lot of international, it has a big brand, and it has all these tech companies there, and all of a sudden we're seeing it in this situation.
Unfortunately, it comes down to that 5-letter word, greed. These people that just got convicted in federal court that we talked about for corruption, all wealthy, relatively wealthy people. Why did they need this? Why did they need more? It's greed. And that's what happened with that assessor. It's greed. And you see these convictions and you see these instances that I've just pointed out, and you say to yourself, how much more is there out there? And the voters, the populace, they have to be saying to themselves, how much of this do we have to tolerate? You got London Breed who's going to basically be unopposed. And, 20 years ago, corruption like this, you would have been bounced as the mayor by now. And the people have had it's a very difficult atmosphere where people just have thrown up their arms and said, there's nothing we can do. We're getting the short end of the stick and nobody's standing up for us.
Now, what do you think is going to happen to San Francisco if this continues at the rate it's going?
The homelessness problem is front and center. They're not taking, it's a Band-Aid approach. It's an expensive Band-Aid at $1 billion a year. But there's no results. The streets are still bad. The drug dealing is still bad. We don't see, the light at the end of the tunnel is the train coming the other way. There is no light at the end of the tunnel. I'm an optimist by nature, but you look at the last 10, 15 years, how can you be optimistic?
Why are so many people leaving California? It wasn't long ago, people from everywhere wanted to move to the Golden State to enjoy a better life. Sadly, the standard of living has been dropping in the past decade. Are you like me and wonder why this is happening? I'm Siamak Khorrami, host of California Insider. In our film, Leaving California, The Untold Story, I take you an intimate journey of love, loss, tragedy, and hope as residents face the prospect of leaving their beloved state. Everyday people like you tell their stories, and we get to the minutes of the film for free by leavingcalifornia.com. Now, Pete, you grew up in the city, you love the city, you told me offline. How does all this make you feel?
Oh, it makes me feel terrible. I said to my wife, why are we still here? Why do we stay? Are we gluttons for punishment? I would walk my dog every morning, and I guarantee you within 5 blocks of our home, there would be, I could guarantee you I'd find broken glass on the sidewalk from a break-in in a car. And we live in a pretty nice little neighborhood. But nobody is exempt from the problems in the city. It's in every neighborhood. And I don't know what the answer is, and I don't know why. I keep saying to my wife, why are we still here?
Now, do you think the average, so you were a lifelong Democrat, you voted for some of these people, do you think the average people in San Francisco, they want to change what's going on? Do you think they're fed up, or do you think they're just looking at this as a phase? Because there was a phase in the 60s and 70s that people left. Do you think this is worse than that, and do you think people really understand it?
This is worse than that. And if I can borrow a phrase you hear a lot from the drug problem, an individual who's hooked on drugs, they're never going to get better until they get to the bottom, if they live to get to the bottom. Because when they get to the bottom, something goes off. Same thing with the residents of San Francisco. How long can we take this? When are we going to bottom out and understand we're going in the wrong direction? That's the $64 million question.
The people that you are socializing with, your colleagues, the people that you know in the city that have been there many, many years, what do they think? Do they think that things are bad like yourself, or do they think things are okay?
No, they don't think things are okay. They're resigned, as I am, to we're just going to have to live with it. Well, I don't agree we have to live with it, but as long as the electorate keeps electing these same people, we're not going to get anywhere. One of the gems downtown was the San Francisco Shopping Center on Market Street between 4th and 5th. That's in foreclosure. Those Nordstrom, they're gone. That mall underwent so much criminal activity, smash and grab. They had it. The owner of the mall, the owner of the concern there, the theaters are closed, Nordstrom's gone, most of the shops are gone. That's in foreclosure. That's unfathomable 20 years ago. And that's the condition of the city. Union Square was the gem. You know, they used to call Beirut the gem of the Middle East?
Yeah.
Yeah. This Union Square was our gem of San Francisco. People loved to be at Union Square. All the high-end shops were there. The great St. Francis Hotel up the street, the Fairmont, and everything in between. You can't give away space on those storefronts right now. I should take your camera crew up there. For lease. Companies like Sephora took a hike. They're not going to go through this stuff. All these high-end Louis Vuitton, they're gone. This was our gem. The tourists loved it. It's an armed fort now. And I wish I could take your crews up there and walk those streets. So bad that the program that the mayor initiated called the Ambassador Program, they hire retired policemen and they go into these neighborhoods where they've been hit hard with criminal activity, like Union Square, and they have a uniform. It's not a uniform, it's a jacket and cap, but these police officers are not retired, are not allowed to carry a weapon. They have to be unarmed, and they walk around Union Square, and other neighborhoods have them as well, and they try to do their part to assure the merchants and the tourists that, you know, there's a presence here. Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's a useless presence. It's not doing anybody any good. It might mean well, but the conditions in the Union Square area, as well as other places in the city, are just deplorable.
Did you ever think that this could happen to San Francisco?
Never. We saw it happening. I don't want to name a mayor, but I would say around 87, 88, 89. We started seeing, and I was a little homeless guy here and this and that, but now it has just proliferated to beyond what anybody would have ever imagined it could be, and it's everywhere in every district. I was talking to you about the dog. I would walk my dog. We have a mini park not far from our home, and I'd get up early to walk the dog. And I stopped doing it because it was dark.
Wow.
And we'd get out there and she would point. And I knew something was up when she pointed. And they were in the bushes, the homeless. And they would come out every once in a while to go on their way. But they were up in our neighborhood and they were trying to find cover for themselves. And you would find hypodermic needles up there in these parks. And it's a sad situation. Very sad. And don't believe that the crime rate is down. That's a false statement. When people get their cars broken into, they don't file a police report anymore. By the time their insurance company makes them pay their deductible, there's no point in making a police report unless it's in the thousands of dollars of losses. So they're totally underreported crimes in San Francisco. Totally.
Now, your neighbors and people in the community, do they think that this is, when you see homeless people in there, because we were told this is a housing issue. A lot of people are told this is a housing issue. Do they look at this as a housing issue, or do they see the needles and understand something? There might be another story.
Some see the housing issue. More and more are starting to say, wait a minute, we've got mentally challenged people as well as drug addicts camping out on these streets. And it's beyond just being homeless, as I mentioned earlier in the program. There's a real hard criminal element in the drug use, and unfortunately the mental health situation. Either they're naturally challenged or the drugs have driven them to be even more challenged.
Now, Pete, have you thought about, some people have moved out and that they found this solution. It seems like you really care about the city. And have you thought about moving out?
Yes, like I said to you, my wife and I, we look at each other and we do say, why are we here? And maybe it's because we're both natives and we both have faith in a resurgence of the city. But it's tough. It's tough. And the drug sales out in the open, whether it's cocaine or heroin or weed. Of course, they've limited the weed, but still, the meth. You had a house on the west side of the city in the Sunset neighborhood, the quiet bedroom community of the Sunset. It blew up because the guy was making the meth, and
wow.
the whole house blew. That's what we're up against.
And how do you keep going? Why do you keep going?
I don't know. That's a great question. I mean, every community has its problems. I'm not saying it's a panacea anywhere else, but it's going to be far better somewhere else than what we're going through in San Francisco. I won't even go down to Union Square. I won't go down Market Street. It's just not worth it. And I haven't seen the statistics, but we have a great, theoretically, a municipal transit system. I wouldn't get on those buses for all the tea in China, if you excuse the expression. You drive a car and you watch a bus go by, an elongated bus. There's nobody on it. They might be on it going to work in the morning, where there's crowds. During the day, they're empty. Why? And I know why, because I was on it. I was forced to get on it. I was on a bus on Van Ness Avenue. The city goes right by City Hall, and a couple deranged people got on the back of the bus at a stop, and they were raising holy hell with everybody. And half the people are afraid of them. The other half want to do something but don't know what to do. And you're relying on a bus driver to signal that he needs help. And sometimes it comes, and sometimes it doesn't. It's no fun to ride the buses. The clientele on the buses is not your average passenger, and that's why they're empty. Nobody's riding them.
Now, do you think this city is fixable? Is it possible to turn things around in the city if the people had the will?
If they had the will. The problem is when you're in a liberal constituency, They're hesitant to take a tough approach. And that's what you need. That's what has not existed the past 30 years, a tough approach. I'm not saying to kick the homeless further into the streets. That's not my goal. What I'm advocating is there are many facilities in San Francisco that are empty, properties that are empty, that are owned by the city or owned by the school department.
Wow.
You know, the school department has a plethora of school locations, and they have a dwindling population.
Because there's less kids, right?
There's less kids, and there's less people that want to send the kids they have to public schools. The rap is so bad on them. So here we're lying in the city with city-owned property, why they can't renovate them and put the homeless in them and give them their services is beyond me. We're spending $1 billion a year with no results, and you can't spend that money to renovate these buildings and put those people in there. And I'll tell you, when we hit the pandemic in 2020, it took 10 seconds for the President of the United States to declare a health emergency. And every city and county across this nation followed suit. Why couldn't the mayor of San Francisco have her public health director declare a state of emergency on a public health issue with the homeless encampments? The rats, the vermin, the needles, the garbage. You know, the garbage companies don't pick up garbage at the tents. If those people don't go to the can that's down at the corner or 2 blocks away, that garbage just festers there. Why can't the mayor declare a state of emergency? Remove them all from the streets. Put them in housing that the city could easily put together with the properties they own. There's no excuse for this. They let it fester, and we're paying the price.
Now, do you have any other thoughts for our audience?
San Francisco is salvageable, but it's going down fast unless people take charge and do the right thing.
So there was a video that's going around this weekend. That's a couple of tourists came to San Francisco, and they took videos and said the city's completely fine. And all the talk about that it's not good, it's not true. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we're not far from Disneyland in this studio, and I think those people are from Fantasyland that took those videos. They must have had blinders on because that is not the view in San Francisco, I guarantee you. I live several blocks from the Castro district, and that used to be a thriving commercial area. It's a war zone today. You go down there, Walgreens drugstore, the corner of 18th Street and Castro Street. Talk about a cash cow for Walgreens. They have been hit with more smash and grab. There's more locked up products on their shelves that you have to go get a clerk to unlock to purchase because of the rampant crime there. The businesses are suffering down there. That's one of the areas that has ambassadors, those retired police officers. You wouldn't even thought that district would have those 10 years ago. That's how bad it's gotten there. Those tourists were led down the Primrose Path. They didn't go to, and they wouldn't have to look
really
far.
See the San Francisco.
Yeah, they wouldn't have had to look far either.
Do you think that criticizing what's going on in San Francisco has become political? You know, some people would say, oh, okay, why are they criticizing San Francisco? What's happening?
Well, you know, you watch Fox News, and they have the right side bent to their perspective. And naturally, we're the whipping boy. Every time there's an issue, they bring up San Francisco. But it's deserved. I hate to say it, it is deserved. We've gone off the path, and we're spending money like it's going out of style, and we're getting no result.